Good afternoon, Dean Holmes here for Uncommon Sense. Lovely to see and hear you all out there watching live on LinkedIn or later on YouTube or podcasts. I am one person down today. Craig Kamanis is actually missing in action. I spoke to him earlier today. He thought he had an appointment a little bit earlier and he might be slightly late. He's currently late, so the show must go on, as they say. So I have invited a special guest star. It's a little bit different to normal. And so today we'll be joined by ChatGTP. You'll see it on the screen as we go along. I've brought in a ChatGTP prompt here to have some discussions about what I was going to talk to Craig about anyway. I'm just going to use ChatGTP to review my ideas, get some additional ideas, and then use that as part of the content. So welcome, ChatGTP. Obviously, you won't say anything in return. So what I wanted to talk and share about a topic today was to talk a little bit about company values, something that we do as part of our coaching process. We start early on in the relationship about getting really clear on what the company values are. The challenge is that we review them every quarter and specifically in more detail every year, and they do change over time. It changes over time as the company itself gets a bit older, new people come into it, and there's a little bit of a change over time. So it's really important, first and foremost, that we are actually reviewing our company values. And in small business, there's a very close relationship between our company values and our personal values. And so the exercise as it starts typically starts with reviewing the founders or the lead advisors' personal values and turning those into actions that can be used within the business itself. So what I wanted to use ChatGTP for, but also have the conversation with Craig, but he is not here, is have a really good discussion about what we can use our values for in the practical context. So what I mean by that is there's lots of larger corporations which will come up with their values and they'll put them on the back lunchroom thing, or when you walk into the office, for example, they might have put their values in one of the meeting rooms to communicate that potentially to staff. And so I'm not really focused on these big mission company values in that context. I really want to take what our small medium business does with their values and talk about how we can roll that into actually everything that we do within our business, such that it becomes the fabric of how we operate. And so I did ask ChatGTP as our example of 10 ways that values can actually be used in our business. And so it's from the word of the mouth of the tech today in terms of that, but obviously I'll be talking to it. But the shortened one for those watching on the screen, you'll see them now live. But obviously, for the purposes of the podcast, I'll be reading them out as well. So I told ChatGTP that I was a business coach for financial advice firms, and could I please have 10 ways in which we can use values in our company. And then we've got a shortened list on the bottom of the screen here. So this is what I'm going to talk to, which was my content about why we can why and how we can use our values. So first and foremost, the main one that we picked up through this process was using our values as our guiding principles. So what that means in an SME level is that whenever we have to make decisions for our clients, our staff, or ourselves as shareholders, we need to use our company values, which are similar to our personal values, but use our company values to actually determine how we answer those questions. So if you have a company value, for example, of do what's right, and we're in that situation where we found that we've done wrong by a client for any particular reason, obviously we're going to make good on that. And so that's the way, a very simple example of how we can use our company values to do what's right and obviously refund the client in that example. So using our values as a way in which we're ensuring that we're making company decisions is very powerful over time, and it creates that sort of ethical framework to make sure that we're making business decisions that are in best interest of all of our stakeholders. Second thing that came up on the list which is something I do talk about as well, is hiring and recruitment of employees. So, been listening to a couple of the Ensemble podcasts as well from Andrew Rocks and the Engine Room, and he's been talking about the how we're getting staff into particular businesses and how we're recruiting. It's been very interesting to hear that lots of the advice practices that are growing have a recruitment process. And one of the key parts of that recruitment process is communicating the company values to the potential people that are going to join their company in order to give them a great context for what it's like working for the company. And obviously, going back to my first point, ensures that we're making the right decisions overall inside the company. So using your company values and talking about it from that perspective will allow you to step in there. Now, great news. Craig Kamanis has arrived. He's waiting in the hallway. I can see a grin on his face, wider than what I've seen before. So he probably has a good story, which we might start with. And then I'll bring him up to speed with what's going on. So we'll welcome Craig Kamanis.
Good afternoon, Dean.
G'day, Craig. Welcome. The show must go on, as they say. We're halfway through. So my good friend ChatGTP was a guest. And so ChatGTP has been in here talking about our company values. So we're going to roll and continue the discussion, but now I'll be able to talk to a real human instead of an AI machine. So
I can't guarantee the real human will make more sense than ChatGPT, but
well, they gave me some great answers. So we'll compare your answers to those answers, and we'll see. So we've been talking through. We may not get through all 10, but I asked ChatGTP of 10 practical ways in which we could use our company values in our business. So we've talked about it in the terms of guiding principles. We've talked about it in terms of hiring and recruitment. Obviously, a next category around that is all about employee engagement and performance evaluation. That's number 3 and 4, but I'm merging the two together. And so I think it's really valuable, and I'd love your opinion, Craig, in terms of when we're actually working with our teams, whether they're local in Australia or global teams, to start to use our values with all of our employees. And it's a good way of enforcing over time the behaviors that everyone wants to do, but also the behaviors that we want from the company, which are our values, to make sure that everyone's doing the right thing at the right time.
Yep. Yeah, most definitely, mate. And I think the thing I love about values and that type of thing, and whether it's the firm's aspiration or whether it's the individual values that you set out, if they're right and if they've been consulted on and if everyone agrees with them, then what it naturally does is create efficiency.
Yep.
What it also naturally does, though, is it helps everyone. So, and I always like to focus back on this, is think about when you're doing the job that you hate the most in a day, in your work life, because everyone's got one part of something that they do where they just dislike it. It has to be done, but I dislike it. And if you can then take that task and link it back to the company values and link it back to why you're doing it, because what's important about it for the company to go on, what's important about it for the others that work in the company, what's important about it for the clients that engage with the company, then it kind of helps you get through that task.
Absolutely. Well said. It's the thing of there's an old JFK story about him going through NASA and spoke to a janitor, and the janitor he said, "Well, what do you do here?" With maybe quite an obvious question, but his answer was very poignant, which was essentially he said, "I'm helping to put a man on the moon." And so he got this is slightly in the vision world as opposed to values, but he got the understanding of what the whole organization is trying to do. And so when we think about our company values of like do what's right or exceed expectations, the reason why you're trying to do that is for the end client and customer at the end of the day in terms of how you want to look after them. So I think that they're using it to obviously do the worst possible job, but the worst possible job still needs to be done in our businesses at all points in time. So good one to move on to, Craig, which is number 6 on this list as well, is about customer relationships or client relationships. I think that this is a missed opportunity in terms of people that have gone through the effort of creating their company values. I really don't think we do a lot to communicate those company values to our clients. And so it's a very powerful tool in order to, if you think about it in the context of a sales journey or a annual review or just the ongoing relationship that you have with clients, it's okay and it should be rewarded to talk about your company values, whether you've created them last week or 5 years ago. If you think about it in the engagement process of why would I choose to work with you, Craig, would be a typical client response. And you can go down a couple of different paths. You can tell them that you're a master at self-managed super funds and you've done a course. You can talk to them about the service that you might provide, or you could, for example, talk about your company values. And so if you talk about the company values as those guiding principles of how you operate your entire business, you can stop there, because if you do that job really well in terms of communicating the values, I think clients will go, okay, if they live and breathe their values, they will always do the right thing. They will make sure my advice is great, and they will educate themselves if they need to in order to give me the right advice.
Definitely, and mate, it's a really interesting point that you raised, because I know personally with my business, we spent some time on what was our personality, what's our values. We're going to visit feedback there for some reason, but what's our personality, what's our values, how does that make us who we are? And when I saw the output of that, it was the first time I decided to share that with existing clients and therefore potentially new clients. And I know through our conference, we brought our personalities and our values to life, because that is what people align to. And I even decided in a pack that I share with potential new clients, the first 2 slides are our personality and our values now, because if you don't get past those, and it's okay if you don't agree with them, but if you can't get past those 2 and go, that feels like me, then don't read the rest of the pack.
Yes, that's right.
In essence, that's what you're going to get surrounding everything else. So I think it's critical to actually share that stuff with clients, because it's going to attract the right ones and detract the wrong ones that you don't want to deal with anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And that if you then use that same filter in the back end of your client relationship, and so we all have a client that we work with that if we won the lotto, we wouldn't work with them anymore. Like it's just there's an element of just those clients that you're happy to you serve, but maybe they don't match all of your values and things like that. And so once again, it's the way in which you can use your values to make the decisions as to whether you want to continue to work with certain clients as well. Because I would say that it's absolutely okay that if a client didn't match your personal or business values, you don't have to work with them. And there's plenty of fish in the sea for both parties. That there's always another advisor that may have a different set of values that therefore would be happy to work with that client. And if you can let them go based on continuing to live and breathe your own values, that is really powerful.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you're saying no to someone because they don't fit your value set, amazing. If you're asking people in the future to move on as well, that's also really great. Next one, Craig. I'm merging a couple of them. ChatGPT weren't perfect. But there's the last one that's on this list at the moment is community and social responsibility. And I think that this is a good one to summarize the last few that we've been talking about, in that firstly, being able to help the community in certain ways, and do that according to your values, of course, is a really valuable tool to communicate internally to staff and externally to clients and stakeholders in terms of what you stand for. And so whether that's a relationship with B1G1, for example, in terms of Absolute Wealth Advisors, they have a donation plan associated with that. I'll touch on how we do that in a second. But that's a great way of rewarding the community for staff and business following certain values. And so in Absolute Wealth Advisors, as an example, we obviously hire and fire based on our values. Not that we fire very often, but we hire based on our company values. But also then we reward our team based on how they live and breathe those values. So we have the old employee of the month, and we get a little certificate on the virtual fridge now. But we have employee of the month. And the voting mechanism behind employee of the month is essentially give us an example of someone that lived and breathed at least one of our company values by doing something. Okay.
Yeah.
And so it's very simple, just one thing a month in terms of thinking of it and being able to do it. But then the reinforcement of the values is we go through everyone's answers and share some stories. Someone wins, of course, because there's only one employee of the month and there's a vote. But then what happens is that employee receives a cash prize, but also they receive the same money to give to a charity that partners through B1G1 that allows for that employee themselves to give according to their personal values.
Yep, which is great, right? I think it worked very nicely. We have similar examples where teams who want to do team building together have elected to actually go and do that to support a charity.
Yes.
So whether that's going to a food bank or something else that's important to someone, going and giving back to that. But again, Dean, it comes down to asking that question, right? Like, who are the important charities to people? Which way would you like to support them? But it's also, realizing that too, that people contribute in their own way as well. And so getting the balance right is quite a good and important thing to do as well. I remember, when I used to work at Westpac, if you made a donation, Westpac would potentially match it through the different employee schemes and that type of stuff. And so it's each company has different ways of approaching it. Not everyone can do it on the same scale as big or small, but I think it's just a matter of if it's important to the company and if it's important to the people in the company, to finding that way, like you have at Absolute Wealth, to make that work, which is great.
Absolutely. And the other way in which we use our values, which was quite interesting as we went to it, is that we used to, going back in time, this is if I go back 10 years ago, we used to give Christmas presents to clients, and we realized at some point in time that whilst we were giving them, the reality is what the clients didn't value it that much. The whole thing of a gift is that there's a value to that you're getting one gift for 100 people. Some people like it, some people don't like it. You give a bottle of wine, some people don't like wine, some people do. And so at a point in time, we actually decided that we would stop, not because we didn't want to love our clients, but because we realized that they didn't really value it, and value it is not values, but they didn't really value it. And so what we did differently is we actually looked at our values and decided that we wanted to give to the community through this process, but actually involve our clients through it. So we set up a little Microsoft form. We send an email to all the clients every year now, and we say that we have a goal of giving away a certain amount of money in our company. It's linked to money that we used to give as Christmas gifts. And so come back to us with the charities that you would like us to support on your behalf.
Yeah, I like it.
You get the answers. You get a great insight into your clients as well, just by the context of having a look at the charities that they'd love to support. But also, in addition to that, that is creating value because you're understanding what the client's values are in terms of who they would support if they had extra money that we're able to give away, and reinforces that we're a business that's trying to do good through growing a business as well.
Yeah, definitely, mate. Most definitely, it's an important one.
So that is not 10. ChatGTP had a couple of different versions of the same thing, so it didn't get the answer perfectly. For anyone that's interested, I'll put all 10 and the text in the chat of LinkedIn afterwards. It's a great place. I've been testing ChatGTP for a variety of different reasons, and so it's a really interesting place to start your thinking. It's not going to give you the holy grail of every answer or anything like that. But if you're looking for a random bit of inspiration and your partner in crime doesn't turn up on time, then you can jump into ChatGTP and pull a couple of rabbits out of the hat in order to set you up for some context. Craig, any final words from you in terms of vision and values?
Yeah, all I would say is just make sure you don't get them confused with each other. There's a vision, there's a mission, and there's values, and there's even through some strategy work that we've done in the past, an aspiration as well.
Yeah.
And it's important not to get them confused with each other. It's important to have them in their own box and separated and use them for what they need to be used for, would be my last piece of advice, Dean.
Yeah, I think that's really good, Craig. And building on your last piece of advice, and I'll have the final word therefore, is that I like to almost turn them into sentences, right? Like you can have a word and a word is fine, but if you look under the hood, you want to turn that word into a sentence so you understand the activity or actions that you you would like to do or not do as part of building out those values. So so that's our conversation today for Uncommon Sense number 32. Getting everyone thinking about the values within their company and how they can use them in a variety of different ways, as opposed to just putting them on the fridge in the lunchroom. So thanks very much, Craig.
I'm glad I made it, mate. Last week absent, this week late.
Yeah, it was a bit touch and go. I think if you missed 2 in a row, you'd be off.
Yeah, I'd be worried about my sleep.
So we've got a special guest star next week or next fortnight. Sorry, his name is Craig. So my practice over the next 2 weeks is to make sure that when I say Craig, each Craig knows who I'm talking to. So we're really excited about the next guest that we have. So we'll send everyone a notification on LinkedIn to get ready for that event. So we're very excited. So till then, thanks for listening. If you have any questions or comments, please reach out to us in the normal channels. Until then, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks. See ya.